catered, sort of nice hors d'oeuvre food table available for you there. But we didn't really think it all through perfectly. So some of it is still cooking. So, and that's my fault, not our excellent caterer, Melanie Partak. Melanie, say hello. Melanie is the co-owner of the Cafe Con Mel here in the library that you folks told us 7 years ago was your highest priority in a survey of what you would like the future library to be. And you said, we want a cafe. And it was something that had been asked for years before I got here 10 years ago. And it took a long time, and thank God for Melanie, or we still wouldn't have a cafe. But it's, let's see, open 8:30 to 4 Monday through Friday, and then 9 to 2 on Saturday and Sunday. And the hours may change, but she also caters events like this. So we're just delighted to have her and her business partner here. Also, a couple of housekeeping details about tonight. So most of you have been here before, but if you aren't familiar, there are restrooms on the other side of this wall here. And also, even though the library is closed right now, and so like the chances of this are diminished, it's always possible we would have a fire alarm go off during an event like this. One would hope that that wouldn't happen for since your first author talk. Yeah, so one would hope that that wouldn't happen, but if it does, there are 3 ways out of the building or out of the room. The first is the way you came in, and then these 2 doors both lead out to sidewalks out to Mercy Care Lane. So let's, if we have an emergency, let's be like the people on that runway in Japan that got all of the people out safely, okay? So, but we're not gonna have an emergency. So the last thing I wanna say to you is that we are just delighted to have a person that I call a local treasure. And I'm sorry, I have to say one other thing, even though I'm losing my voice. I got an email from the Altamont Enterprise today, and the headline on the email said, "Wiles to talk as a phenomenal woman." So I thought it meant about tonight, but it turns out that the New York State Association of Women Administrators has selected Marie as their phenomenal woman for the year. And they're only 20 years behind me. But at any rate, so you're going to hear a phenomenal woman tonight.
Feel pressure.
You're also going to hear moderation by a phenomenal man, Gilderland's own Paul Grondahl, who has written many books and is the director, the Opalka Endowed Director of the New York State Writers Institute. And of course, you're all familiar with his 35 years writing columns and doing reporting before that.
Up to 40, Tim.
Up to 40. Okay, great. Well, don't stop anytime soon. Paul, Marie feels honored that Paul agreed to write the foreword to her book. And also agreed to come for this event. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Tim. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. It's so nice to be in this beautifully renovated library, my library and our library. It's an honor to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces. Some of Marie's friends drove from long distances, from Cape Cod and from across New York State. That's a beautiful thing. I'm happy that you're here tonight and that I'm here, and this feels a bit like a second home to me. My wife, Mary, and her 4 O'Donnell siblings grew up in Gilderland, not far from here, all graduated from Gilderland High School. We've lived here for 23 years. Our daughter, Caroline, is a Gilderland High grad. I've been making use of this wonderful GPL library over all those years, and I was very honored in 2004 to be named one of the notable authors of the year. What's really special is on that plaque out there, I'm close to my late great friend, Gilderland resident, brilliant historian, Joe Persico, who was a great friend. I got invited into the lunch club with Joe Persico, Harry Rosenfeld, and Bernie Connors. And if I didn't agree everything was off the record, I would give you stories to make your head spin. And I won't. I won't off the record. But it's also kind of a bittersweet evening tonight. The bitter part is that this is the last day of Library Director Tim Wiles. He's a very understated guy, but I want to say a couple words that he's retiring today. I think he's got to turn in his deeds. 10 years of leading this library through this major renovation and expansion, incredible improvements. They raised 1.3 million in grants to upgrade everything about this library. And I've always liked him as a friendly, collegial, collaborative person. He's developed an incredible staff here. I know many of the librarians, they're phenomenal. And he's really taken our town library to the next level. So he does leave a high bar for the successor. I'm not sure who that will be. But let's join in a round of applause for our library. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Paul. There's many things I'm impressed about Tim, but that hair, man, I wish I could. I had that hair about 40 years ago, Tim.
I did forget to mention the food comes after the Q&A just because of my timing issue. So
yeah, that's right.
But I'll look forward to curry meatballs, veggie spring rolls, and the fruit and veggie tray, and then assorted cookies. And there's hot tea back here that's ready now.
I'm hungry now. Do we want to just go eat? Right? But that was the bitter part, and I'll get to the sweet part now. We're here to celebrate Tim's better half, Marie Wiles, Dr. Marie Wiles, Superintendent of the Gilliland Central School District. And we're here to celebrate the launch of her new book, Lessons from the Bard. I read it, I wrote the foreword, and we're going to talk about it tonight. The subtitle is Lessons from the Bard, What Shakespeare Can Teach Us About School District Leadership. Marie and Tim are low-key Gilliland power couple, and I greatly admire both of them, and I was honored when she asked me to write the foreword. A couple words of introduction. I know some friends here. This will be redundant, but I just want to give you a little bit of her career. She earned her undergraduate degree at Temple University and a master's degree from the University of Albany. Go Great Danes. Any Danes in the house? I worked there and I'm an alum. And then her doctorate at Syracuse University. Some of her classmates are here tonight, which is pretty cool. And she's got more than 35 years experience as an educator. She began her career as a high school English teacher, where she shared her love of Shakespeare's plays with her students. She held various positions in boards of cooperative educational services before becoming a BOCES district superintendent in Clinton, New York. I think there might be someone here from Clinton. Is there? Anyway, near her childhood home in Oneida County. She was the youngest woman to serve in that capacity anywhere in New York State. And her son Ben, who's here tonight, is a junior at Gilliland High. And he was born when she held that very demanding job. She was named superintendent of schools here in Gilliland District in 2010. She's committed to supporting and mentoring the next generation of school leaders through various roles. And I want to mention that I'll start this conversation with Marie, but we'll have time, as we said, for audience Q&A and book sale and food and everything afterwards. So as William Shakespeare famously said, what's past is prologue. So we'll start, but let's have a warm round of applause for Dr. Marie Wiles. I saw some concern on the faces. We're not grading this, are we? There's no test.
There will be a quiz at the end. So please take out a sheet of paper, number 1 to 10.
I was gonna go pass fail, but everyone passed. But my first question, I guess, since the director's here, and this is the last, do you have any overdue books?
Done. I have connections to get all those corrected.
So, since this is last day, I'm just curious as a spouse, are you happy or a little jealous? He seems to be walking on air when I saw him.
Well, I'll tell you what he said to me the other morning as I was running out the door with 15 bags and my various vessels. He said, today, this is Wednesday. Today, I'm going to accomplish 33% of my remaining goals at the Gilderland Public Library. And tomorrow, Thursday, it will be 50%. And Friday, it will be 100%. And I won't tell you what I thought in my head. I am thrilled for him. I am thrilled for him. I am immensely proud of what he has done here. Because I know my husband well, and a lot of the things he had to do were out of his comfort zone, and he rose above that and did a great service to the Gilderland community. So now but somebody's got to pay our come through college, so I'm saying that.
So anyway, let's start with your Shakespeare origin story. I'm curious, did you first read Shakespeare in high school? Were you turned off like a lot of students I knew and friends I knew? I happen to like Shakespeare, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. So how did you connect with this playwright from 400, 500 years ago?
Well, I was a reader as a kid, and I think my first reading of Shakespeare was when I came upon a collection of his plays that were tucked away in my parents' house. And I might have been 7th or 8th grade. And I think, desperate for something to read in the summer, I just plowed through, and I don't think I understood any of it, but I am really persistent. And anyone here in the room who knows me, I do not leave anything undone. So I read the whole thing, and then my first probably formal connection would be in high school, where I have a vague memory of reading Romeo and Juliet. But I didn't really dive in until when I was an undergraduate. I started as a music major. That was one thing I didn't finish. I transitioned over to be an English major and had to take a course in Shakespeare and just really got immersed into it. And so that's where it began.
Are you picking up? I'm not sure they're hearing you like they're hearing me. Is that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yours isn't picking up there, right? Holding it closer.
It's the same system, so it is either hold it.
Hello. It's not. Hello.
Speak louder.
I don't know. I'll give you the.
Okay.
You're the top billing
Usually
here.
know what to not hear me.
That's better.
I taught junior
Yeah,
high.
this isn't really- I can project. We're talking about Shakespeare. So I'm wondering, when did you see your first Shakespeare play or watch a Shakespeare movie? And was it a life-changing experience?
I don't have a lot of recollection of going to see Shakespeare or even the movies. I think the first time I really saw a Shakespeare production was when I was a brand new English teacher. Many years ago, and we had a curriculum that included, I taught 7th grade, 9th grade, 12th. That was my day, every day.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And in 9th grade, this was at New York Mills Junior Senior High School. 9th graders read Romeo and Juliet and The Merchant of Venice, and seniors read Macbeth and Hamlet. So I really needed to dig in at that point to get, a couple hundred kids to be with me for this. So that was really when I dug in, and I loved it. It was like a challenge to get these reluctant readers and writers and thinkers to dig into some text. So that's when it started really with the love.
Who liked it more, 7th, 9th, or 12th?
Certainly my seniors seemed to be into it a little bit more. My 9th graders, they liked Romeo and Juliet in 9th grade. But the seniors, I think, these were a college-bound group of kids, and I did everything I could possibly think of to make it interesting and relevant and fun for them. And we would have some amazing conversations about things like ambition and purpose and, talking Macbeth, how women can manipulate men. I mean, so we had some really interesting conversations, and it just kind of grew from there.
How did they respond to the language? Because it's a challenge, that the iambic pentameter. It's not rap or hip hop or rock, whatever they were listening to. Did you try to translate or use new editions? Some editions kind of play with the language a little bit, or did they get the language?
We did a little bit of all of the above, honestly. So the text was always in the original because you just can't replace the original. So for our younger students, we would have like the parallel translation along the side, and that was just the text that our school district had at the time, which I hated because they would go right to the easy stuff and not messing with the really cool language. But for my older students, we would watch clips of various scenes from the movies, but we would take time to parse the words very carefully and try to extract meaning from that. I would ask them to, okay, translate. So what is he really saying right now? And then what about the special way he's using language that makes this better than how we say it now? So those kinds of things would draw the students in. And, you know, I would have kids get up in front of the room and let's act this out. They just, oh man, especially the young men. Are you kidding me? What do you want me to do? But, you know, ultimately, the thing that draws me to the works of Shakespeare, and really all literature, but particularly Shakespeare, is that he really has a handle on what it is to be a human being, which is the work, I think, of teaching and learning. It's not the content. You know, there's really no quiz you can give that's really as important as how we help young people become better human beings, which is something that isn't all that popular right now. I just read an article where it was where like everyone's fleeing the liberal arts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what we have to get them to flee back. Because I mean, you name the profession that you want to be in. Before you do that profession, you're a human being. And I think Shakespeare gives us the opportunity to reflect on others and to reflect on ourselves and make us better at whatever it is that we do. Most of the time, it's a cautionary tale. You just can't replace that.
How did the students respond? Because I know there's a lot of book banning now. I mean, there's a lot of sex and violence and body and sexual double entendres and that. Did it go right over the kid's head, or did they snicker and kind of get it? Or how did you, in all those plays, there's a lot of violence in those plays too.
Well, the violence they got, you know, but missing the sexual innuendo is maybe the plus of them not really getting the language too much. It's like, I am not going to explain this to you because I don't want to have your parents calling me at the end of the day. You know, Miss Marshall said about that. So yeah.
And then jump forward to school administrator. You know, this book started with the presentation for a conference with other superintendents and administrators. This is no secret, so we're all going to see you on the news tonight. You had the news, you know, constantly you're putting out fires. So can you explain briefly what the controversy was today? And did you think up any Shakespeare line to deal with? I mean, you just took the call an hour or two ago.
Yeah.
So you can share, I'm sure, because it'll be public in about 3 hours.
Well, I'm sure the news
It's
is
probably
already
already
out.
on. I mean, moves like that now.
You know, not unlike the plot twist of a Shakespearean play. When you are responsible for 5,000 kids in a school district in 2024, you can't really predict what's going to happen, other than you can predict something is going to happen. So we had actually a couple very difficult situations, but midday yesterday, you know, my middle school principal called me and said, we found a kill list. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we worked quickly. I mean, we called the police, we called parents, you know, do all the things we need to do to immediately create safety and mitigate any further problems. And thought we had done that. You know, our friends at the Guilderland Public Library, the Guilderland Police Department, you know, jumped to our assistance. And we thought that what had happened was a fairly contained experience. I'll think again. It grew by really by the morning that whatever had been posted, we thought, taken down social media. It's on
It's
that.
never taken down.
Yeah, I
Is
know.
it TikTok or Instagram or?
No, it was just, I think, I'm not sure what even platform it was on,
Whatever.
but it got recirculated again. And, you know, I was saying to Mr. Laster, our principal, well, how long do you think before Channel 10 or Channel 13 calls? And not much longer, my phone dinged and it said, from my communications office, Channel 10 would like a statement. Okay. So I called her and she goes, and now Channel 13 would like to come get a statement. And I'm like, well, at least they're not showing up with their cameras, which is a win. So if Channel 13 is showing up here tonight, I am going to see emergency.
To be or not to be.
Yeah, you know, and it's a sad situation. I mean, what we dealt with today wasn't really about violence, it was about a young person who needs help. And, you know, that happens so many times each and every day. And I think about my work, you know, all of you, I have a to-do list every day. But several years ago, I turned it into what I won't get done today. Because, you know, I can set out with the best of intentions of trying to do great things to help us move the school district forward. But the reality is the responsibility of the day-to-day and keeping kids safe and doing all the things that you need to do to respond to the day-to-day. Those to-do lists happen on Sunday afternoon. That's the reality of it.
I gotta say, I think you have a harder job than Tim. No disrespect, Tim, but.
He would say that too.
But the stress and the pressure cooker and now the parents, you know, the backs blow up was just one thing and now, you know, the divisive politics. Does Shakespeare really come into your head? Is it like your happy place? Like, I'm just gonna take out my Riverside Shakespeare and read it.
I'm just thinking of some tragedies.
To really like give you a deep sense of peace or calm or?
No, not really. You know, I think I'll circle back. You talked about this whole thing started with a talk that I gave. And, it sort of circles back to why I landed with Shakespeare. A couple of years, actually, it was almost 2 years ago now, the New York State Council of School Superintendents, of which I've been a member for, I don't know, 25, 28 years. We have a spring conference, and in the recent iterations of the conference, we've gotten away from bringing in high-priced keynote speakers because our colleagues want to hear from other colleagues. So right around November, December of 2021-ish, I got a call from someone at the council, and they said, you know, Marie, your name came up. How would you feel about doing one of these Ignite sessions at the March conference? And I'm like, I don't know. They're really hard to do. You get 10 minutes. You have to create a slide deck where the slides advance automatically every 30 seconds. And you got to stay on task. And I'm not, you know, when it comes to talking, I want to maybe talk about some things longer than 30 seconds. But I am really not good at saying, no, I don't want to do that. So I said, sure, you know, what's my topic? And they said, well, this was right after COVID. So, well, we want you to talk about social emotional wellness. What? I don't really know anything about that. But that was my topic. So I really wrestled with, well, what am I going to do with this thing? And I don't know how or why. It was probably 2:00 in the morning sometime. I thought, well, I know someone who was terrible at social emotional wellness, Macbeth. And, you know, it turned out to be such a perfect play to talk about what not to do if you want to be socially and emotionally well when you're in a position of leadership. Because to survive this work and thrive in it, you need to have a really good set of social connections, networks, people who love you, care for you, cut you some slack. And Macbeth starts the play on top of the world, like he is the Thane of Cawdor and he is riding high and everybody thinks he's a hero. And after he meets those, you know, 3 evil ladies on the moors who tell him he's going to be king, he slowly separates himself from every single human being on the planet who cares about him. And he spirals in, including his wife, who also spirals into things. And by the way, she made him do it. However, he separated himself from every network that there is. And when I think about my own social emotional wellness, number one, I have an amazing family who put up with me, deal with whatever they have to deal with, understanding that we have family time and then there's work time. And B is greater than A, sadly, but it is, but they support me. And I have strong networks among board members sitting in the front row here tonight, my leadership team, my colleagues. So I never feel, no matter how bad a day gets, how convoluted, I have a lot of people I can reach out to say, I got this issue, can you help me? Can you help me think about it? So I never feel alone like Macbeth did, like his wife did, who ended up, tragically.
So that's one of these 5 plays, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, The Merchant of Venice, Julius Caesar, and Hamlet in this book.
Yep.
I understand that you taught 4 of them as a high school teacher, but why did you pick those? Do you like them most, or the most popular? They give you a variety of themes to work with?
Well, I started out with the idea of poetic justice. Like, we make kids read these plays, maybe the grown-ups should too. So I went through a number of other plays as possible. Like, I love King Lear, I love Othello, I love Midsummer Night's Dream. But nothing jumped out as strongly from them around leadership lessons as they did from Romeo and Juliet, the ones that you mentioned. And some of that might be the timing of where we are in the world right now. So on one hand, I thought these are plays that are very accessible. They're plays that have been turned into movies, that have been adapted into other kinds of productions, Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story. So I thought, for all those people who shiver at the thought of reading Shakespeare, I thought there was a way in. I mean, even Gilligan's Island did a variation on Hamlet, to be or not to be, that was quite entertaining and rousing. So I wanted it to be accessible, but also to have some good connections as well.
What was your peak Shakespeare experience? Because I mentioned mine in the forward. I had this incredible opportunity in 1980, junior in college, to work at the Oregon Shakespearean Festival, National Oregon. World class, with some amazing actors. And that's when I knew I wasn't good enough to be an actor. I better try writing. But anyway, it was an incredible experience. Nothing has ever topped that. But have you seen great performances? Have you ever directed one of kids or anything? I mean, what's your peak Shakespeare experience? Other than writing and publishing this book, it's pretty nice.
I can, and this is so corny because it's not a great production, but I can remember, this was back in 1990-ish. We were reading Macbeth with my group of seniors, and I used to stand at the door and would say silly quotes from, not silly, but I take quotes from the book to say hello, and one of them was, a drum, Macbeth doth come. And a peak experience would be when one of my high school seniors, who was super, super cool, far cooler than, would say, Miss Marshall, a drum, Macbeth doth come. And I'm like, oh my God, I got him. So, I mean, for me, in this, whether it's Shakespeare or really any piece of literature where you sense a bit of reluctance for young people to join in with you, when they do, it's like, aha, I somehow turn that key. And who knows, maybe that young man is really into Shakespeare right now. But once a teacher, kind of always a teacher, and it's those moments that stick out.
And it's really directed at school leaders, principals, superintendents. But you don't have to be a Shakespeare scholar. You make that point. I mean, this isn't a rigorous kind of academic exercise. What's your main purpose of putting this out in the world? What do you hope that these educators will take from it?
Well, I'll go back to the theme of humanity. I think all of these plays have, the particulars of their plots have have lessons in them. Whether it's to take care of yourself from a social and emotional well-being perspective, to get enough sleep. I mean, one of the things that my colleagues, when I did the talk, resonated most on was that in my 10 minutes, I mentioned for maybe 30 seconds, you know, you really do need to get enough sleep. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth never slept. It did not serve them well. And so I have a lot of colleagues, for example, who I think wear it as a source of pride. Oh, I don't sleep. I only need 3 hours. That's just not true. You need more than 3 hours. You're not doing your best work on behalf of the community that you serve. So I think I wrote the book to remind people that, you know, like Shylock in The Merchant of Venice, administrators are human beings too. When you prick us, we bleed. When you tickle us, we do laugh. And we are always just trying to do the best thing we can for students.
We did promise some time for questions from the audience. It'd be a good chance, because that food is smelling awfully good. I mean, I have other questions, but I'd love to hear from some of her friends or colleagues or anyone. Yeah, just shout it out and I'll try to repeat it. I know
Do you have any favorite bad puns from Shakespeare? By the way, you do need to read, because the microphone leads into the computer, which leads into YouTube. Please repeat the question.
Repeat the question. Do you have any favorite bad puns from Shakespeare?
Oh man, you needed to like send me that question ahead of time. I don't know about bad puns. I mean, I have some favorite quotes from Shakespeare. You know, and my favorite of all, and actually this talk I've got to give on whatever night I got to write a speech for. I'm titling it "To Thine Own Self Be True," which is not a pun, but it's one of those lines from Shakespeare that, on the surface, it sounds like it's all about honesty and integrity, which is how I take it. But if you read it in the context of where it happens in the play, it's about, you know, look out for number one and don't step in number two. And so that's not really a pun, but it's a line that I think is pretty entertaining and thoughtful.
He seemed like he was looking for an opening. Do you have a favorite pun, sir? You have the floor.
Don't get him started.
Oh, I could see out there, he was itching to perform a little bit. See if he'll hang on his own petard.
There you
To be or not to be, and it is not to be.
Thank you. All right, who's got another question? Yes, Diane.
What are the leadership lessons from leadership?
That's a great question.
Yeah, what are the lessons of leadership in Romeo and Juliet?
Two big ones come to mind. One is the need to understand how the adolescent brain works. And the adult characters in Romeo and Juliet were clueless as to how the brains of 14 and 15-year-old children work. And because they were clueless, we ended up in horrific tragedy, obviously. You all know the end of that. And I think that's equally true for people who are leading children through adolescence right now, which, by the way, begins at age 9 and goes to 25. And it's a time when your brain is the most malleable compared after 0 to 3. So in the book, I write about the research from a gentleman, actually, who was a professor at my undergraduate institution. Last name is Steinberg, and he wrote, oh my God, I'm gonna blank on it. I'll think of it in a minute, but he writes about the adolescent brain and how understanding how that works will transform how you think about teaching children. The other thing from Romeo and Juliet that is so timely, I mean, the basis of that knowledge, of that plot, is a feud between the Montagues and Capulets. The reason for the feud is never disclosed, but it is so ingrained in the entire community that everyone associated with the family just hates the other side no matter what. They just hate them. There's no reason, there's no logic, there's nothing but hatred. And I think we're at a time right now, and have been for a while, where, my gosh, you're just like black and white, and please don't tell me anything different. And I think the beauty of the story is that, you know, in these two young people, they see past the differences of their family. And actually, if you read closely in the early part of the play, the older generation, the fathers and the mothers of the children are also like so tired of this feud. Like, can we just get it over with? And obviously they can't because it's so ingrained throughout the whole community that it just carries itself. And, you know, I use the phrase cautionary tale a lot in the book, and I think that's one of them. So the lesson for leaders is, so how do you lead when you have the Montagues and the Capulets like, in your school, in your, you know, board meetings? I don't have a snappy answer for that, other than to know that, come on, grown-ups, this is not good for kids if we can't get past our differences. They all the young people in Romeo and Juliet end up very bad place. And it's all because the grown-ups can't get past the differences. And that to me that's the tragedy of this play.
Thank you. Who's got another question? Yes.
Did the process of writing the book change your leadership style?
Did the process of writing the book change your leadership style at all?
That's a great question. You know, I don't think so exactly. It certainly made me reflective on my day-to-day kind of things. But I don't, you know, I can like, my board is sitting here. I'm kind of steady Eddie and have been steady Eddie for a long time. But it certainly helped me, you know, I think when Paul was talking about, you know, some of my interests, I really am committed to doing what I can to help the next generation of leaders rise to the occasion. And, you know, the traditional preparation programs will teach you the technical parts of the job. But that doesn't even scratch the surface of what the actual work is. I mean, people have no clue what I do all day, I am sure. Oh, she gives a speech in June and presents a budget in March. I don't know, what else is there? There is just so much about understanding people, having compassion, being measured, and getting information before you start making decisions, thinking about how you talk to people and how you invite people in and how you inspire others to do the work. Because the fact of the matter is, kids are great learners in Guilderland, not because of me, but because I have 450 amazing faculty and all the other staff who play their part. And my role is to like make all the pieces come together so they can do their job. And so I think in writing the book, I wanted to try to convey that way of thinking to people who are thinking about, geez, do I want to be an administrator?
Thank you. Yes.
It sounds like there are possibly a lot of lessons for everyone, not just school district leadership.
Lessons for everyone, not just school district leadership in these plays, beyond educators.
I think there's lessons for anyone who's in a position of responsibility or who has to make decisions, which are parents, business leaders, school leaders. You know, I think it really does expand beyond that. But, you know, the way I write the book, I mean, it is helpful for people who are thinking about, want to be a principal. Do I? Want to be a superintendent? Well, are you sure? But it really is about decision-making, working with people, understanding the consequences of the decisions that you make and how you make them. So yes.
Thank you. Oh, a lot of hands. Go here, Mary.
What kind of a response have you gotten to this book from your colleagues and your target audience?
What kind of response to the book from your colleagues and target audience? I mean, it's just out, right? But you shared it with some people.
Yeah, it came out in December. Everyone's been very nice. So I think that's good. My initial response is when I gave that talk back in 2022, and I had a lot of colleagues who rolled my eyes like, oh my God, Marie, Shakespeare, really? But in my 10 minutes, and I did make the 30-second transitions on time because I practiced in front of my dog like 100 times. People seem to resonate with it. The messages around sleep, I've heard a lot about that, about taking care of yourself, about the myth of finding a work-life balance. That is a myth. So I think it's been generally positive.
Yes.
My kid is very good in maths and he plays with phone all the time. Doesn't read books at all. How to motivate him to get into some kind of this philosophical or this literature reading?
That's a great question. His son's very good at math, but he spends a lot of time on his device and like so many kids now, how do you get a student interested in reading great literature or any creative work?
I've never met anyone who didn't like a good story. So maybe it's finding like a story that he finds interest in. Maybe it's about math, I don't know, but I do think that human nature is about narrative and finding story that resonates. So maybe it's a matter of, having your son talk to a librarian. He can. I have been taught out.
1 more hour. He's right there.
But seriously, to have a conversation with a librarian, to find the just right book, because I think that for all of us, there's a moment when you feel like, I love to read, but it's usually the moment when you find like that book that has a story or a character or a theme that connects with you. And it's out there. You just have to find it, and that's where your librarians come in handy.
I'll make a shameless plug. NYSWritersinstitute.org. We love having high school. We're on the campus of UAlbany. We love having young people come. We have some of the greatest writers from around the world. And also our bookseller, our independent bookseller, Bookhouse, Stuyvesant Plaza in Guilderland. I would bring them in there and let them pick a book. They've been working with us for 41 years at the Writers Institute. And they can recommend a book. We have a former bookseller here. I see my friend Kate. I mean, booksellers and librarians will give your son something that'll just inspire him and get him excited about reading. Amy.
I worked for Murray for many years. I was.
No, she worked with Murray.
My daughter's favorite English teacher.
I was really lucky to work with Murray. So Murray, I have a question about your writing process because I saw how hard you worked. And so I'm wondering, when did you write? When did you have time to write? Did you have readers? Like, how did that work for you in your busy schedule? Like, many of us fantasize about writing books when we're working, and we're just like, when do you do it?
So everyone heard, that was actually one of my questions too. In her very busy job, when did she find time to write this book? What was the process like?
Well, I am an early riser. Most times, like call snow days or things like that. I did a lot of the writing in the very early morning. I have SU colleagues here. We were all in the doctoral program together. I wrote my dissertation many years ago when I was young and had a lot more energy. Early in the morning, I'd get up at 3:30 and write till I would take a shower. I couldn't do 3:30 this time. I'd get up many days if I could. If I couldn't, I just wouldn't. But I wrote many days. I'd get up at 4:15 or 4:30, and I transformed our guest room into my little working. I had this one cup coffee maker because I didn't want to go downstairs and wake up the dog, because then, your best writing now, I'm feeding the dog, letting the dog out, and it's over, So I would tiptoe across. Every weekend I would carve out, whether Saturday or Sunday, some number of hours where I would just sit there. And I just thought about it, it's like a little bit of a job. And, I was fortunate with the project because I had a publisher waiting for me to write this. Kind of a an interesting story. You know, I did this talk in the American Association of School Administrators has a magazine, and the editor of that, I knew because I've been a part of that organization for a number of years, said, "Oh, Maria, I saw the title of your talk. Can you write 600 words for me?" And I'm like, "Well, I already wrote the thing, so sure." So I sent him my 600 words, and it was published in June of 2022. And anyone who's done anything in schools know what June is like. It's just crazy. So I get this email from this guy I don't know. "Hi, Marie, I read your article in AASA. I'd like to help you make that a book." In my head, I'm thinking, okay, I write a book, and then I write you a check for $10,000, and I'll have a book. So I forwarded the email to my friend at AASA, and I said, "You know, what is this?" He goes, "Marie, this guy is legitimate. He's from Roman and Littlefield. You should call him." So I called him, and he says, "Well, I really like this idea. I think you should do it." And I'm like, "It's June. I haven't written my graduation speech yet, much less a book." So he said, "Well, after that, just send me a proposal." So I sent him a proposal on a Sunday afternoon in July, and he sent me a contract the next morning. Tim was a little jealous. 'Cause he's a writer too.
It's a dream writer's journey.
And he gave me the deadline of December 31st, so 6 months, and I'm like, this is, all right, I'll try. Well, I was halfway by that point, and I emailed him and I said, "I'm not going to be done by December 31st. And he was very gracious, and I said, "Do you want the first 2.5 chapters or whatever I had?" He goes, "No, take all the time you need," which is the kiss of death for people who need deadlines to get anything done. So I just said, "I am going to finish this before the year deadline." And one day, I beat it by 1 day.
Yay,
Yay!
Steady Eddie wins the race. What was your dissertation at Syracuse on? I'm curious.
Pre-service teacher commitment to urban education.
I'm sure that was a bestseller. Just kidding.
Hey, I passed.
Any other questions? That food's getting very aromatic. Yes.
Teachers navigating to the versions that students.
That's a tough question. Merchant of Venice, how do you navigate it with the overtones of, direct anti-Semitism in that play?
How do teachers now become today's, hot buttons
Become controversial.
Well, I write about that very thing in the book. You know, it's a comedy. Yeah, it's a comedy. But as I say in the first couple sentences of the chapter, for everybody but one, because it's a tragedy for Shylock. And honestly, I think that the way you teach it is to read the book and how is this man treated, and what's the history behind that? How does it play out? What does that mean for him and for others? I think it's kind of a straight ahead kind of discussion. You know, I have to tell you, I was, I wrote all that before this got so much more worse since October 7th. But I think about it all the time, and I'm really glad that I did write about it because, you know, Shylock is despised, but, people treated him like they were terrible. I mean, here's a man who's part of a culture that you can't own land, you can't be an apprentice, you got one job, and it's loaning money. So please don't get mad at me for trying to earn a living, doing on the one job you let me do. And, he wants revenge on Antonio because Antonio was terrible to him. I mean, here's this upstanding Christian, but he was mean and hurtful, and so he wanted his revenge, and you can understand why that's the case. But I think if I were in the classroom right now, I would absolutely teach that play right now. I think it's very, very, very timely.
These are wonderful questions. What an audience. I think, did you have your hand up too?
Just one
question, and then you'll have the last question.
Are you going to write another book?
Oh, we gotta write another book.
Well, I will say this, Mr. Genovese, who's sitting in the audience here, gave me the next book that I should write, which is about, we're doing some work at the school district around future ready preparedness. You know, I don't even think Tim knows this. I do have another idea for a book. It's not at all like this one though. I haven't really framed it because I haven't had a ton of cognitive space to think about it. But I think when I do have some more space, you know, I have been blessed in my life with having a very diversely abled family. So most of you in this room probably don't know, but I have two brothers who are pretty significantly disabled, both live in group homes. And I have had a tortured journey in my life from being, I'm the youngest of five, they're both older than me, obviously, from being like angry that why do I have to have two brothers that are like smart and great and good, to two brothers that are so dear to me right now. I'm their caregiver. My parents have both since passed. So I want to talk about that journey in some way, because, you know, none of us are perfect. And all of us are gifted, just in really different kinds of ways. It's taken me, you know, 60 plus years to kind of figure all that out. And so I don't want to write a book about disabilities or any of the technical stuff, but I like to write about or think about what it means to be a human being and to really care about other human beings, even the ones that are, you know, are tough to love, you know. My phone rang, I'll tell you, my oldest brother calls me all the time at the most inopportune time to have the exact same conversation again and again and again. So it is 6:22, time for us to leave. The phone rings, I see the message come up, and I really wanted to pick up, but I would have been 25 minutes on the phone having the same conversation that I have all the time with it. So I let it go to voicemail, and I'm having, you know, a certain amount of guilt right now. So that's what I want to write about, for what it's worth.
Sounds like a beautiful book. You should write it. I think you got a good editor right here, but I think we have time for one more question. He had his hand, and I would remind you that it's a wonderful book. I've got my copy, but I'm going to get one more for a gift. Somebody asked me if we really wanted a copy. Marie will sign copies, and then there's a chance to ask more questions afterwards, but we'll make this the last question, sir.
But before the question, I'll just give you the housekeeping. So you're going to need to hustle out into the hallway after 5 minutes. There'll be a
Giving me
table.
direction.
There'll be
This
a
is not
table up
typical.
there with the book. The book is $25. We can take cash, check, Venmo, or PayPal. And if none of those works, we can make arrangements for you to get one in the future. So when the thing is over, you know, don't go eat these beautiful meatballs. Your public needs you in the hallway. So, also, the cafe operator just wanted me to let you all know that the hot appetizers are not gluten-free. So if you're gluten-free, you probably don't want to indulge.
Thank you. And your last question here.
Oh, I'm a little too busy to read your whole book, so what do the cliff notes have?
It's a short book. Come on.
You can do it. You can do it.
But I want to say this has been really delightful. What a great audience. Incredible questions and lessons from the Bard, Dr. Marie Wiles. She made her deadline, and we hope she brings out the next book too. But thank you all for coming.